Welcome to Declassified Malaysia. In Chapter 23, let us explore the possibility of what happened after motion of no confidence being initiated by the opposition in Dewan Rakyat. The pundits call this as office-seeking opposition. Let's be specific. Let us look at the specific words in the motion made by the former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. It read as follow: mengemukakan resolusi untuk membuat ketetapan bahawa Perdana Menteri Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin sebagai ahli yang berhormat paguh tidak mempunyai keyakinan majoriti ahli-ahli yang berhormat Dewan Rakyat. Standing Orders 26 and 27 was used to permit the motion after a notice of 14 days. A confident motion, although obviously an important test of the authority of the Prime Minister, is normally seen as testing confidence in the federal government as a whole. Therefore, motion of no confidence operates not only against the Prime Minister, but also the entire cabinet. While the Dewan Rakyat Speaker has the discretion to decide which item should go first on the parliamentary order paper, the motion of no confidence should be given priority over other private member motion by convention, which will be held on Dewan Rakyat sitting on 18 May 2020. Although convention are not law, convention are basically rules of political morality, and they are rules on political morality that are regarded as binding. Although standing orders have no specific provision for a motion of no confidence, but that motion is implicit in Article 43, Clause 4 of the Federal Constitution, which covers situation when the PM ceases to command the confidence of the majority of members of the Dewan Rakyat. The fact that the federal government of the day must retain the confidence of the Dewan Rakyat is the constitutional principle which determines the relationship between Parliament and the executive, which is the federal government. Article 43, Clause 4 of the Federal Constitution embraces the answerability and accountability of the political executive, the federal government, and the Parliament. Under Article 44 of Federal Constitution, the legislative authority of the Federation is vested in a Parliament, which consists of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and two majlis known as Dewan Negara and Dewan Rakyat. Within this parliament, Dewan Rakyat is the dominant house. The federal government derives its authority, democratic legitimacy, and ability to govern from parliament by virtue of its majority in Dewan Rakyat. The federal government can only be sustained by its dependence on Dewan Rakyat for supply bill and the passing of the legislation bill. Therefore, the ability of federal government to command the confidence of the elected Dewan Rakyat is central to its authority to govern the country. If you don't have the majority in parliament, how are you going to pass a bill of supply? How are you going to pass the legislation bill? You cannot do anything. That's why you need majority in Dewan Rakyat. Under Federal Constitution, this ability to command the confidence of majority in Dewan Rakyat governs both the appointment and resignation of Prime Minister and his cabinet. It is on the ability to command a majority in the Dewan Rakyat that federal government depends for holding office. Under Article 43, Clause 2A and Article 43, Clause 4 of Federal Constitution, the federal government must be able to command the confidence of the majority of the members of the Dewan Rakyat. Article 43, Clause 4, it reads as follows. If the Prime Minister ceases to command the confidence of the majority of the members of the House of Representatives, Dewan Rakyat, then, unless at his request, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong dissolve Parliament, the Prime Minister shall tender the resignation of the Cabinet. If the government win the motion of no confidence through simple majority, then Parliament can conduct their business as usual. However, if the government loses the motion of no confidence, it will trigger Article 43, Clause 4 of Federal Constitution. It left us with 3 constitutional scenarios to happen for the country to move forward, as specified under Article 43, Clause 4. Option 1. The Prime Minister. Option 1. If the government loses the motion of no confidence. So they have 3 options. Option 1. The Prime Minister advised the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to dissolve the Parliament. However, the dissolution of the Parliament is subject to the consent of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong based on Article 40, Clause 2B of the Federal Constitution. Parliament will dissolve once the consent was given by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. This will pave the way for the general election. That is option 1. Option 2. The Prime Minister may advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong to dissolve the Parliament. But the dissolution of the Parliament is subject to the consent of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong based on Article 40, Clause 2B of the Federal Constitution. If Parliament did not dissolve because the Yang di-Pertuan Agong withheld the consent, meaning it is morally imperative that the Prime Minister shall tender his resignation and his cabinet. Okay, now we look at option 3. In option 3, the Prime Minister choose another option. He tender his resignation and his cabinet. Once the Prime Minister tender his resignation, the new Prime Minister will be appointed based on Article 40, Clause 2A, together with Article 43, Clause 2A, where the Yang di-Pertuan Agong may act in his discretion in the appointment of the new Prime Minister, who, in his judgment, is likely to command the confidence of the majority of the members of Dewan Rakyat. However, the question is, who is it that the Yang di-Pertuan Agong will appointed as the new Prime Minister? That is another question. Here, I show some simple diagram on what will happen after vote of no confidence was held in the Dewan Rakyat. The first option is, of course, if government wins, the current governments can carry on. However, if the government loses, it will trigger Article 43, Clause 4 of Federal Constitution. The first option, if the government loses, the PM may resign. If he resigns, new Prime Minister will be appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. The other option is, the Prime Minister requests the dissolution of Parliament. However, this is subject to the consent by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. If Yang di-Pertuan Agong give the consent, there will be a general election. However, if the Yang di-Pertuan Agong doesn't give the consent, it is morally imperative that the Prime Minister should resign. After that, the new Prime Minister will be appointed by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. However, based on the current political scenario, the federal government was actually left with only one morally imperative option. The only option is option 3, where the Prime Minister should tender his resignation and his cabinet. Now, why Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin must tender his resignation if he lost the motion of no confidence in the Parliament? To find the reason, we go back to his appointment as Prime Minister by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on 2nd March 2020. Muhyiddin Yassin was appointed as Prime Minister by virtue of Article 40 Clause 2A and Article 43 Clause 2A of Federal Constitution. Due to unprecedented resignation of the former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, the new Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin was appointed based on convention within the ambit of discretionary power of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. On 2nd March 2020, during the maiden address to the nation, Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin acknowledged himself that he was appointed as Prime Minister after having receiving the majority support of the members of Dewan Rakyat. Quote, this is what he said during the maiden address. I realized that my appointment was not by way of an election. Instead, I was appointed after getting the majority support of the members of the Dewan Rakyat. The question that we beg to ask is, did he really get the majority support of the members of the Dewan Rakyat when he met the Yang di-Pertuan Agong for his appointment as new Prime Minister? If the Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin lost the motion of no confidence on him probably on 18 May 2020, that means Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin is actually misleading Yang di-Pertuan Agong on his appointment as Prime Minister on 2nd March 2020. If Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin lost the motion of no confidence, clearly he has no majority support of the members of the Dewan Rakyat. So, did he mislead the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on this information when he was appointed as Prime Minister? Because of this nature of his appointment as Prime Minister, when he lost the motion of no confidence, do we expect this person who misled the Yang di-Pertuan Agong in the first place to again request and advise the Yang di-Pertuan Agong under Article 40 Clause 1 together with Article 43 Clause 4 to dissolve the Parliament? Why would the Yang di-Pertuan Agong give a consent to the advice given by person who misled him in the first place? Based on this argument, therefore, it is morally imperative that Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin will be left with only one option. He should tender his resignation and his cabinet. You who misled the Yang di-Pertuan Agong for your appointment as Prime Minister should not give any advice to His Majesty anymore. After you mislead the Yang di-Pertuan Agong on your imaginary majority support of the member of the Dewan Rakyat to become Prime Minister, it is shameful for you to meet the Yang di-Pertuan Agong anymore, let alone to give advice on the dissolution of Parliament. This is what happened if after the votes to the motion of no confidence happened in Dewan Rakyat and the government lost. This is what we think should happen if the federal government lost the motion of no confidence. This is the only scenario that will happen. Therefore, there will be highly likely that no general election, either Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin win or lost the motion of no confidence. There will be no general election. Thank you for watching.